Here.
Bradley Miller. Ian Shaw. Ian is in a depot, so we will reflect the fact that Rick Tisch, Ian Shaw, and Bradley Miller are not here. All right. We've got our one agenda item. I wanted to go ahead and start by giving y'all an update of what's kind of transpired in the last 2 weeks. So we have started a really good routine for the staff. The first is that we've got weekly staff meetings of all the direct leads. That's really produced a lot of synergy and just everybody's on the same page, and we know where everybody's at. That very first week after our first staff meeting, every director had one-on-ones with everyone on their team to check in, be able to answer any questions, address anything that was going on, and then be able to report back on the next weekly meeting. So the teams have now started kind of replicating what we're doing as the agency, and they're having weekly meetings with their teams to make sure that we stay in step and nothing's missed. Last week we had a full staff meeting. It was a hybrid meeting, so about half of the staff were here and half of them were online. We kind of just went through what was going on, where everybody was. We had Bradley, I'm gonna call roll with you, just you. Brad, are you there? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear us, Bradley? You're on mute. Okay. The roll will reflect that Bradley Miller is in attendance. So Brad, we're just going up through an update as far as weekly meetings with all the division, all the leads for every department, and then the full staff. So the full staff, we basically kind of went through where we were. We did a presentation on change, how change is inevitable. Basically, there's 3 things you can do with change. You can avoid it, you can accept it, or you can lead it. And so I think it was really well received by the teams in that, every department is going to go through change, and the agency itself is going through change. So it was just a little bit of a leadership moment. Megan and I have testified at the Senate Finance. We have testified at the House Appropriations. In both, we thanked each committee respectively for their base bill. Their base bill does have a 5% raise in there. We did go through, and we also thank them for if the bills are approved and are finalized and go through, that the PMP is funded with NARC's care. So the base bills were really great. They really listened to the needs, and we were very, very appreciative of what they had done. We did go through all of our exception items, including merit raises, and this was a real concern with staff. So we wanted to make sure that we went through this with them as well. We wanted them to be comfortable with the fact that, we are still on course. We're still, making sure that, we're looking at those cost of living increases that we need. We asked for, and the House gave us a little bit more time, so we went into a little bit more detail. We went over the 10 FTEs that we need, as far as what their positions would be and what they would be doing. And then we did look at the increase for the executive director. So we went through all of those. The House has already gone through Article 8 and has taken, the exceptions to subcommittees. The Senate is still working through, the appropriations process. So, you know, our person over at LBV really is doing, when things come up, he's asking us for additional information and has been exceedingly great in making sure that he has what he needs so that, you know, we're fully funded as we go to, you know, when we come out of the legislative cycle. So, that's a lot of information. Well, actually, let me give you one other update and then I'm going to open it up for questions. So the other thing is on Monday, we were asked to come give an educational testimony in the House Health. The chair gave us, through her admin, gave us a list of topics that they wanted background on. When we got the instructions, it was background, and then what would occur if legislation was adopted. It turned out really what they wanted was just the background information. So we went through and gave them what they needed. You know, I emailed the committee to let them know if they needed any other additional information to reach out to us. But that was on Monday. And we took no stance on any of the topics. It was really strictly just an educational session on those specific topics. The other thing I mentioned before I open it up for some questions is that, you know, we're in regular communication with the governor's office. So, you know, that those communication lines are up, open, and when needed, they reach out, and we've reached out to them a number of times. So with that, I'll open it up for questions, and then we'll kind of proceed from there. But that was a lot of information. Yes, ma'am, Miss Jenny.
Has there been any discussion about the changing up in statute of the requirements of the ED being a pharmacist and relieving that requirement?
Discussion where, I mean, it was presented to the health that may come up. The health committee, the health house committee, House Public Health. There you go, House Public Health. But there has not been any questions coming down or questions that have come into the agency that I'm aware of, and I'll ask Megan if she's had any.
No, I think it's come up. Ann and I met with Representative Oliverson at his request, and you know, it was mentioned there as well, but there wasn't really a discussion on it. And I haven't seen a bill yet.
And what's the last date that a bill can be filed?
I think we have 8 or 9 days left.
Oh,
Yeah, it's the middle of March. I was gonna say March 15th, but that may not be correct.
I think it might be March. I think it's.
We will look that up and let you know before we adjourn for sure.
thank you.
Other questions? Okay, seeing none. So the rest of the meeting is really for us to come up with future plans and have a discussion as to, you know, really where we go. I do not think that, and I will be, you know me, I'm totally transparent. I do not believe that we'll have an end resolution coming out of this meeting. I think we'll have a set of instructions collectively for staff and myself as far as where we're going. But wanted to make sure that everybody knew where we were and to be able to answer questions as they came forward. So in the staff discussions, and especially with the you know, the leads of all the departments, one of the things that's kind of come out is the preference is that we do not rush into, selecting a new ED. That as far as bandwidth goes, there is concern over whether or not the staff can adequately perform all the duties that are required to get us through the legislative session and train somebody in the position of ED. A strong, so the preference is to, possibly look at, can we locate somebody that is either been with the agency or been a board member that could be an interim, that knows the workings of the agency, or do we kind of continue with where we are, which is working. We've already started dividing and conquering. Rick Fernandez is going to do a ACPE accreditation meeting. Bradley Miller is going to do the law presentation at TSHP. In conjunction, that will probably be with either Iona or myself, just so that there's, we don't want to have Bradley, have to do that all by himself. We want to make sure that we're spreading the wealth. So if you're going to TSHP, let me know. The other thing that's come up is, April will be, or May, sorry, will be NABP. As in the previous several years, I'll be our voting delegate, but of those that are going, which I know right now, I believe it's Donna and Rick. But if there's somebody else going, I'd love to know that. We really would love to have as many people there as possible, but we will need an alternate voting delegate. So, we'll need a volunteer for that. And then, as things have come up, we'll have to look to see, what we can do day to day. Our staff is amazing. I've spent pretty much the last 3 weeks here on and off, and everything that we need to do as an agency to protect the public, which is our job, is being taken care of and taken care of in a way that is second to none. I mean, I cannot tell you how great our staff is. Our department heads are on top of everything, and really seem very appreciative of everything that all of you do, as well as especially Megan and Nan. So I want you to make sure to know that that's going on. And then we really need, from there, we're going to go ahead to see, how we begin the process of, going through finding our ED. I mean, the thing to kind of keep in mind, which is why we want to have as much support for the staff as possible and as little disruption as possible, is this is a legislative session. There's a lot going on. Probably the earliest that a posting could go out would be in the next maybe week to 2 weeks. From there, it has to be up for 10 days. So we're looking at, as far as putting together a group to interview. I mean, the earliest we would have anybody in place would probably be, mid-April or maybe the beginning of May, but probably mid-April. So with that, again, a ton of information. I really wish y'all were all here because it's hard doing this on the screen. But I'm glad that we could just all get together, and we may have to have just some interim meetings like this. Obviously, public meetings. We do have somebody in the audience, which I applaud. But we want to make sure that we're all doing our part and what we need to do to go forward. So I will open it up for discussion. Yes, Bradley.
Good morning, everybody. Has there been any thought about reaching out to the runner-ups that had also applied and interviewed for the ED position that Tim got?
We had not gone back to the previous, if we're going to do, whether we do an interim or whether we do we just start the full search. It has to be a posting. They would have to reapply. We really can't go back to previous people and say, you're the runner-up, would you like to, we have to go through a whole new process. And that's,
Okay.
It's just, there's no way around that. We have to make sure that we're following all of the guidelines and doing our hiring appropriately. I don't know who's first. Jeannie, I guess you were first, and then Lori, I'll come call on you.
So to hire or appoint an interim, does that have to go through the state hiring process? So this posting that you're mentioning is for the actual ED position, or is it for an interim position?
Well, that would be kind of for us to start to look at. Megan can give us all the legal ins and outs, so I'll turn it to Megan for a second, and then Lori, I'll call on you.
So if we were to do a job posting for interim, it still has to follow the 10 days of being posted and all of the normal, interviews, application grading, all of that. We've vaguely looked into the possibility of whether or not this person could be considered a contract consultant. And that's really unclear right now. And we're trying to get some more information on whether or not that's a possibility. It's looking like maybe not. I mean, we don't have a solid answer on that. We're kind of in a different position than a lot of other agencies are because of, our statute that requires it to be a pharmacist. So what happens with a lot of other state boards that we've seen is that the GC will step up as interim, until a new ED is put into place. But because of our statute, I'm not a pharmacist, so it's not, but we don't have anybody, I guess my point is we don't have anybody to emulate, because what we've seen at the other boards is just the GC stepping up. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. So the grading of the applicants, is that a state guideline, or is that just something we've historically done?
I mean, you have to grade applications. There's not a way that you don't grade. I mean, that's part of like the hiring process. And there are state statutes and rules about how you go about hiring people. And that's where the 10 days of posting and, the application, the state of Texas application is required.
So the rubrics and all that is part of that process. Let me go to Lori, and then I'll come back to you, Dean. Lori, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, thank you. So the timing of the salary adjustment that we've put forth, how long will it be until we know if that has been approved, and when would that take effect? Because I think that directly impacts the caliber of applicant we are going to receive. And so as I think through this, I think that, if we could enter, whether contractually or as an employee of the state, identify an interim applicant who is willing to serve in that capacity for an extended period, so that we can do a very thoughtful, thorough search rather than, and again, having a better grasp of what the timing of that salary adjustment is kind of helps me to see through all of this. So I guess that's the first question. If what we proposed goes through, when will we know that, do you think, and when would it take effect?
So we wouldn't know 100% for sure until session is over. We might get a good idea of what's in the draft bills as they move through committee and everything, but it's not until the very end of session that we know whether or not a bill is going to go through. Some bills are written with provisions where a 2/3 vote can make them immediately effective. Some have their own effective dates written into them. And if they're not, then the default is usually September 1st for something to go into effect.
Okay.
The 5% that's written into the base bill right now, my understanding is that it has an effective date written in there for June. And I don't know if that would be, just for that, if it continues that way and it doesn't get amended. If it would be just for, that 5% that's written into the base, or if they would try to do that for any other salary adjustments, it's really unclear right now.
Well, September 1st is really only 6 months away. And so with that, I feel like for the sake of delaying a decision, if we have the appropriate interim leadership, until then, if it increases the caliber of the candidate that we would have, I would say we wait.
Hey, Julie.
Wait, Donnie, Daniel was next, and then I'll come back to you. Is that okay? All right, Mr. Daniel.
Yeah, and my question kind of aligns with Lori's question as far as timing. If the request that we directed last meeting to open up the pool beyond just a pharmacist candidate, if that were to be approved, I guess we would also be looking at the end of the legislative session before that takes place. Does that have to be approved by both the House and the Senate, or is that just a committee that approves that particular directive?
Yeah, it would have to be approved by both the House and the Senate. It would follow the same guidelines or the same timeline.
Okay. That's yeah, because I agree with Lori, and I agree with the statement that was made at the very beginning that preference around not rushing this process and really making sure that we're looking at a broad pool of candidates. I get where Bradley's coming from on, have we considered the previous folk, but my understanding is that the pool is relatively shallow the first time around, or the last time around that we were looking at an ED. So anything we can do to kind of broaden and deepen that pool, I think would be good, no matter the time that might take.
Thank you. Donna?
No, my question was really about in joining what Lori said. What is this salary right now for this ED position?
Is that something that would need to be discussed in executive session?
No, salaries are public.
Okay.
Public.
It's for state employees, salaries are public. So you can go, there's an online search tool where you can go in and put somebody's name in and see the salary. I believe it's 140 something. I don't know the exact number. Anne might be able to grab that.
Yeah.
Take me just a minute.
Okay.
I think it's 141.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then our ask was 30,000 and some change. $30,168. I don't know, I said it so many times I should know off the top of my head, but I don't write it down. But it's 30,000 plus some change. So it would take it up to 170.
Well, and if it were to get to 170, you probably would get some better applicants. Pool for that. Okay, thank you.
Other questions, comments? Donna?
I have a question. So I agree with everyone. We need to take our time to, get the right person, obviously. But I wanted to clarify, so kind of what I'm hearing from you two, though, is that you are doing fine right now, and if we don't get an interim person, you all are basically okay with that? Is that what I'm hearing, that the staff feels like they can run without an interim director? And we should just concentrate on the real director position and getting that right? Is that correct?
The staff really seems, and like I said, I've done a lot of asking how everybody's doing and where we are. Right now, we're really in great shape. It will be as we go forward, as things come up, it will be that each of us will need to step up to the plate possibly for something like if we have an emergency testimony that needs to occur, one of us might need to, we'll see who's the closest and who's the most available and can get here, to make sure that we're here for it. I think we still, this is my opinion, so I'll throw this out there. I think we still maybe talk to see if, maybe an interim is a possibility for a very short term, but I do think that our goal needs to be to find the exact right person to do this long term and be ready to move forward. The staff is great, and I have total faith in them, and I've reassured them that, from all of your communications that, you are there for them, and they all know that, and they appreciate that. Yes, Daniel?
I agree with Donna's comment. I think what I'm hearing, at least from the two of you as well, is exactly what you just reiterated. But would it be, and I'm just trying to think out loud here, the anticipated start date of a new person might be pushing into 2024?
Oh, I have not.
If you're saying that the likelihood that we're not going to get a decision from the Senate and the House until September 1st, at which point then we would be able to push out a potential, candidate profile along with a salary projection, going through that process of hiring somebody through a state process, I see this moving into that first portion of 24.
Daniel, to clarify, we should know what the legislative session, like how the bills went by end of May, beginning of August.
Okay.
The effective date of them may not be until September 1st. And again, we haven't seen what the effective date would be. It could be one of those situations where, it's effective immediately or has a different date written in there. But a lot of bills take effect on the first day of the fiscal year, which is September 1st, but we would know ahead of time.
Okay.
If those been passed and, went through the governor's office and made it through.
So
And that's
that
where
process,
I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't know.
I was just going to say, so the process of getting over those hurdles could coincide with initiating a process to go ahead and start a search.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you for clarifying that.
we can time ahead of time. So, and the other thing is to kind of look, and I prefaced this early on, so I just, I want to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page, is we may have to have a couple more of these, as we go through, to make sure that everybody, knows where we're at, what we're doing, and we're in agreement with how the process is going. And Suzette, I was like, this is corner. Y'all move places every now and then.
Gotcha. A quick question. So I'm assuming.
Okay, Suzette, speak up just a little bit.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're real low.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm assuming that we've looked at, Megan is like, she mentioned the general counsel usually stepping into the role. Is that something, there is no allowance for that in this situation? based on our regs. Is that what you're saying? And that's been reviewed? There's no like, emergency type of situation, that type of thing?
So, we do have that statute in place that says the executive director must be a pharmacist. We haven't requested any additional review on that. If you wanted to direct us to do that, we could ask the governor's office what they think about that. But, that hadn't been a directive, so, we hadn't done that.
So I guess we would be requesting, what you're asking is, can we request a waiver?
Correct. Something that allows us in the interim to potentially use the general counsel as our executive director if we think that's appropriate, right? If we think that that's something that we could do until that time we decide or get everything in order to, start the process and finalize the process. Because as we're saying, it could take a while for us to get there.
Well, we can definitely, we'll finish the conversation and we'll come back to you. Lori?
I would recommend that we move forward with a waiver or a request for a waiver.
Bradley, your comment?
Well, not so much as a comment, but just a question. It's my understanding that the ED in general, not only is the secretary for the board meetings, also leads the agency, also attends various pharmacy meetings throughout the year. Is there anything else that they do? I just need to know, a little bit more of what their responsibilities would be.
I mean, so part of it is the head of the agency, the ED, is responsible for signing a couple of, pertinent documents. Those have already been transferred over and I've signed them. There are, as far as department heads, there are some department heads that report directly to the ED. And so, we've kind of established that in place. Megan, I'll let you add color.
Some of the other things that Julie's, had to step up and do is let her signature, be applied to things. So when you think about board orders and rulemaking and those sorts of things, there's approvals there that are needed. And so right now, Julie is kind of filling that role of where the executive director would normally approve or sign. And so that's another part of it.
Yes, ma'am, Lori.
I know that it took a while for Tim's signature to get on some of the license renewals and that kind of thing. Whenever Allison left, has his signature now been removed from all of the renewals? I know you said you're putting it on a lot of things, but I just want to make sure that we are still not issuing registration renewals and that kind of thing that have his signature on.
So the ticket was put in to have his signature, removed, or renewals and those sorts of things. The process of granting a license and actually getting, the physical license that you can hang on your wall, there's a little bit of delay there. And so there are some licenses going out that were issued under Tim. So those still have his name, but when we come up to the time, where it's going to switch over from, that date, then it shouldn't any longer. And Misty Anderson's been working really, diligently to make sure that switch over does happen.
Okay, very good.
Rick?
Hope you can hear me? No?
Yes, sir.
Oh, great. So what you were saying earlier, the earliest posting would be in 1 to 2 weeks. That would require the existing requirement of pharmacists, right? And maybe we get a good applicant or what have you. But if not, and the change is made with the changes to the requirement of being a pharmacist, you do another posting after that, or this posting you said in 1 or 2 weeks would be under the existing requirement, correct?
Right, so if you were to post in the next few weeks, it would be under the existing requirement. We'd have to still wait and see if a bill was filed, and then if it was filed, if it passed, the House and the Senate, came back, for the governor's office. So if you chose to post now, it would be limited to that pharmacist pool. And it would be, under the salary that we have now, because we don't know whether or not the legislature is going to increase that salary yet.
So does it make sense to do a posting now? And if based on the results, issue another post, or is that too complicated, or should we just wait? What do you think is the best process?
So
I don't know
I'm
the timing.
I want to make sure I'm following your question. So if we posted now, the post would either be for interim or strictly for ED. If we, depending upon which we posted for, if we posted for interim, then once we determined when we would post for ED, we would repost. If we posted for ED and we would interview the applicants, and we would select from those applicants unless we deemed that we did not have a good applicant, and then we would repost. But if we had a suitable applicant, we would hire from that posting. So did you follow kind of?
Yeah, I got you. So you were saying the posting in 1 or 2 weeks, we haven't fully decided what we'd be doing and to post
No,
right
that's
now.
what, that's the.
That's the
It'd
question.
be absolute earliest that we could get a posting together.
Okay.
If you didn't want to wait, that's, the very quickest that we could do it, but that's not saying you have to do it within that time period.
Okay.
Suzanne?
So, now that we potentially could have a waiver for the general counsel to be interim, I guess, Megan, are you, is that something that you could take on within your current role and, the responsibilities that you have and move it to, others within the group? Is that feasible for you, I guess is what I'm asking.
I'm glad you asked, because that was my question too.
Yeah, because, I know that we have an opportunity, but I just want to make sure that that's not, overwhelming for you based on your current roles and responsibilities. I know we have other attorneys, but there is a lot of things going on. So I just want to make sure you're okay with all of that.
It would be a lot. And I think just to preface, I don't know that we would get a waiver. So, I'm not saying that this could happen. It would be a lot. And I think I would have to lean on you all for a lot of support if that did happen. Because, I wouldn't be able to do all of the legislative stuff by myself and go to all of those meetings, by myself. If it was a temporary situation, I think we could do it. I do have great attorneys who can support me. But it would need to be a temporary solution, not a forever solution.
Bradley?
I'd like to throw my name. I'm sorry. I'd like to throw my name into the interview process for, doesn't matter if it's the interim or the permanent ED director.
All right.
Whenever
Once
that occurs.
Yeah, once we get, the process is, once we have the posting out there, a interview panel will be put together. It will not be the whole board, but, just like we did before with, the executive positions as well as, other individuals. So, definitely something that we'll get in there. So thanks for raising your hand, Bradley. Donnie, you had something?
Yes, it sounds like, currently, Megan, you're probably and Julie are our de facto leaders there at the board. And, so I don't really know whether, I mean, I don't know about the variance because it may not work, but how long do you think that currently y'all can operate and with our help? I mean, we're here to help you and you've got to ask each one of us to come alongside. This is not your own, you're not by yourself, is what I'm trying to say. You're on a board. So we're here to help you. Do you think we can go until September if we post that now and we get the money appropriated for the 170 range? Could y'all handle it without an interim till then?
I do believe that if everybody steps up, like we've already started asking people to take on, additional tasks, that it is it's doable. I'd love for us to have a process in place by May, May, June, but it's definitely something that we can continue. And like I said, our staff is amazing. I cannot tell you how great they are in what they've done. The added steps or added things that have had to come up, we've been able to manage to do them. And really the good thing, I say this often, and when I do, I kind of cringe a little bit, but I'll go ahead and say it is, there were some good things that came out of COVID. And one of the good things that came out of COVID was our ability as companies and boards and government and society in general to pivot and be able to recognize the fact that we can have a meeting like this. We had a SOA mediation yesterday, which, we can, just like our informal conferences, those have continued virtually. So it really has allowed, flexibility that we would not have had otherwise. Pre-COVID, there's no way that we could be doing what we're doing. But with the fact that we have technology and we have the ability to think about processes in a different way, it really allows us to be very, very functional and to do things very efficiently.
Well, hey, Julie, my question, the other question was, various things like our informal conferences, excuse me, if you think that we need an extra person on those, since we don't have the ED on that, is that something that the staff can send us emails that we need another person and keep us more helpful to you and Megan?
That would be up to you all. In the past, we didn't always have 2 board members, and I do think moving to having 2 board members on the informal conference panels was good. There's not a legal barrier to doing it without the executive director. But if you all wanted to have 3 board members on that informal conference panel, we could definitely have Amy reach out to all of you and get that covered.
Do you think that was needed? If it's not a problem, but we are here to help you.
Yeah, it's definitely not required, but it's definitely something that, I made sure that, okay, who's on our fall conferences next time? And I didn't think about the fact, would it be beneficial to add a 3rd? So I will ask everybody to kind of think about that, and I'll maybe circle back to it. And Rick and Bradley, I'm going to apologize. I do not know whose hand went up first. So
Brad's next.
All right, Bradley. Go ahead, Brad.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. Bad connection. Again, restating what Donnie mentioned, we're all here to help you. And to the rest of the board members and everybody else that's listening, I had sent Julie and Megan an email with an idea of, instead of it always Julie and Megan on a monthly or quarterly basis, talking to the department heads at the agency, maybe board members could take turns along with Megan and do that whole process. It came back that that would be a public record, et cetera. But I wanted to throw that idea out. And again, you know, we're here to help. So just let us know.
Yeah, and that's, I think I read your email differently than how you just presented that. So the weekly meetings are pretty set. We've moved them a little bit here and there because of testifying. But as my schedule gets a little crazy, you know, that's a great idea, that I'll tap y'all in to help sit on a meeting as we go. I thought you had asked if we could have the whole board present for meetings. That would then become a board meeting and a public record. So I apologize. I did not understand that request.
Okay, yeah, no, that I'm sorry, maybe I wasn't clear, but you know, maybe a different a rotating board member and Megan could meet with the department heads. Not by all means, not the whole board.
Got it. Okay, well, I will definitely as we go forward look to see how we can kind of do that. Rick, you had a question?
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Have we received any public comment feedback on what they gave their opinion on what we should be doing? I know we haven't done anything, but has anyone said anything directly to you all, or that we need to be aware of from public perspective?
No, and this is a public meeting. There was, just like every, you know, we are total sunshine. Every meeting we have, it was posted 10 days in advance. There was the ability for the public to make comments. So, and that was received. Yes, Lori.
Personally, I have received several concerns, primarily from TSHP members, regarding our request to remove the pharmacist requirement for this position.
Well, I think the one thing that we need to let people know, I mean, our preference would always be that it is a pharmacist. But you know, if we found the right person that wasn't a pharmacist, I don't want to preclude them, because I want to make sure we've got a great you know, pool of candidates. I will say, especially in the last 3 weeks, this is personal opinion, my observation is the job that I have been doing for the board in stepping in as head of the agency is in a lot of ways very similar to my job as a director of pharmacy operations. It is very little pharmacy and very much being able to run a large business and being able to have and Rick shaking his head now, you know, and Rick has a position very similar to mine, and as do you, Lori, you know, and Donna and Suzette. Really, I have lots of people on this, so I'm not telling you anything you don't know. I mean, it's nothing really to do with what I was educated as a pharmacist or my pharmaceutical knowledge. It's my business skills, my HR skills, and the leadership skills. And that's really the crux. And when you look at the great thing is that we've got really great pharmacists that are on the staff. And we have a exceedingly talented and intelligent group of individuals that are serving the state of Texas in your capacity that are there for the ED in that position. So it's always going to be that our preference is a pharmacist. I would not want that differently, but I want to make sure we're also doing the right thing too, from a business standpoint and from a agency standpoint, to have the absolute best person that we can have. And I think, Jenny, you raised your hand, and then Daniel has his hand raised, but I want to make sure that I honor that.
Yeah, I had to go back to cases and informal conferences. Since the board delegated to the executive director in the past to sign off on some of those that don't go to informal conferences, do we need to delegate that now to the president?
It already was. So we've had two come up. They're really, and the things that we had delegated in the past, they're really pretty cut and dry, easy things. Somebody wants to revoke their, wants to go ahead and resign their license. So we've already had two of those and we've already done that. If those will still come, just like always, everything that's done, those will still come in your packet for May. You will still review and look at everything that was done, so that, if there's something that you don't agree with, you'll be able to say that at that point. Daniel, does that answer your question, Jenny? Okay.
No, I was going to say I really appreciate your previous statement regarding the comments that Lori had received. I obviously won't receive those calls because I'm not a pharmacist, but I do feel that, opening that up to a broader pool of candidates is going to be essential to making sure that you get the right person. And I don't know. I guess that was just the main thing I wanted to say, is that I just really see having that option as being something that's going to give you a little bit more of an option, as opposed to really reducing that pool of candidates.
Megan has a comment.
And just real quick before I forget, we looked, and March 10th is the last day for bill filing.
Coming up quick.
All right, and okay, so with that said, are you needing some action beyond what we did at the last meeting to push that forward?
No.
Okay.
We can't lobby. So as a board, you've done everything that you can do there.
Thank you.
So this has been, seeing no hands, a lot of great discussion. So I'm going to kind of paraphrase and see if we're kind of at this place, but want to make sure. So I'm hearing a general consensus that we would like to investigate whether a waiver is possible. That we do feel like we want to make sure that we are not rushing into anything, that we're selecting the correct candidates. We can further, and this is a lot of information, and let me backtrack a minute. So the last time we all met together, it was a lot of information for our brains to process at that time. And so we've taken some time to get to this point so that we can have a very educated and thoughtful conversation. Because when it comes down to it, we are going to protect the public and the citizens of Texas through all of our actions. And that is making sure that our agency is strongest and best that it can be. So that all being said, what we can do is investigate to see what our options are with the waiver, and then come back in 2-3 weeks and have that additional information, and from there decide, you know, where we go forward as far as whether or not that the waiver is possible. Do we look for an interim, or do we begin the process for search for an ED? So I guess I need to find out at this point what the pleasure is of the board, and where you feel like we are and what we should do. Suzette?
Yeah, so, I think we would, under your guidance with Megan's, as being in charge at this moment with board assist, right? That would be the path we'd start off first. Then we would ask for a waiver for the general counsel to potentially be the ED. And then if we all agree, then I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. Do we need to make any type of request to add a non-pharmacist to the role of ED, or you said that was already in motion?
That's in motion.
Okay.
That's out of our hands at this point.
Okay, and then wait until we get some sort of salary adjustment to begin to post for the permanent ED. That would be my recommendation.
All right. Daniel?
I agree with everything that Suzette mentioned. I think the only clarification I would need is what is the likelihood that no action is taken on the request to allow for a non-pharmacist to be ED? What's the potential that isn't even considered?
Do you mean considered by the legislature?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
there's really not a way for to predict that. As you know, we can't lobby, so it's not like we could go to offices and advocate for something like this and get their feedback on whether or not they thought it was appropriate. That's just not our role.
Yeah, that's my only concern. I agree with everything that was summarized, and we'll go with whatever is of the best interest of the board. I'd just be concerned that we're waiting for an answer to a question that isn't even being considered.
Yeah, there's just no way to predict that.
And Daniel, what we can do is let you know by the bill filing deadline, or before, if a bill is filed, and then keep you guys updated on the status of it. If it is filed, we can watch as they go through committees and those sorts of things, and we can keep you updated. If, like I said, there's not one now, but if one was filed, we could keep you updated on the status of that bill.
And the deadline for that is March 10th.
March 10th.
Thank you.
Donnie?
My question is, have we, what direction has the governor's office given y'all on this whole, how we're playing this out? Have they given you any directives? Because we really need to be paying attention to what the governor's office says.
They haven't given us directives. We've had a lot of conversation about, what may or may not be possible. And I think, again, because we're in such a unique position that they didn't necessarily have, the full answers to give us. So they've been trying to look at things as well. Julie's been on all those calls, so.
Yeah, it's not been directive at all, Donnie. It's been in response to questions, and they've given us support and guidance. But no directives. It is our job. Well,
Right, but you would think that this is not the first ED that has vacated a position before. So they might have had some that they could give us.
Yeah, it's the first ED that has vacated that has the specific requirement of the licensure. To our knowledge. In all other cases, like if you look at the medical board, the ED of the medical board is not a physician. He does share as a medical. His title
Might be medical director.
medical director. So there's a licensed physician that this the ED, but the ED is not a pharmacist or not a doctor. Yes, Suzette?
Now, I was just gonna, to Daniel's point about waiting, I think the other thing we're waiting on is, does the compensation get adjusted, right? Because I think that is also part of our discussion, right? If we don't have the right salary, we won't, attract, good talent into the role, unfortunately. So, I mean, it could go either way, right? We have a role that's not a pharmacist, but the salary's still at, the 140 range, or vice versa. So I think, we're still kind of held up to, especially the salary being, somewhat adjusted if possible to try to, bring in different talent than we saw previously. So that was the only comment I had.
Yeah, and I when I did the exception list and I testified in both the House and the Senate, I did really reiterate the fact that that was the need for it, and why we were really asking. Yes, Daniel?
Just curious, I know we did give direction during the previous meeting regarding the non-pharmacist portion of the I can't remember what we called it, but that part at the end of the meeting. I'd like to clarify that in a vote as opposed to just direction. Is that something that we would be able to do this morning? Are we agendized to take a vote on that action, since last time it was just direction?
I think, it does relate to the position of the executive director. I mean, you could, and I guess that would just formalize it. You've already given, the directive.
Yeah.
So
I just
so
want
it would just be in favor, like,
I just want there to be a clear understanding from this board to the legislature, to the governor's office, since we cannot lobby, that this is something that is important in our process. So if we're allowed to make that, if I'm allowed to make that motion during this meeting, I think, Megan, what I would need is just a little clarification on what that language would be so I can make that motion. What was the previous direction from the last meeting that Lori shared?
I believe it was something along the lines of, looking into the possibility of having that statute removed.
And that would be that would be the legislature?
So, right, so, it's kind of, we can't go to the legislature about it, but it's kind of like the cleanup bill where you can put, your wishes out there, and then if others choose to agree with you, they could try to get something done. So I mean, I think you could probably, move to have us continue to look into the possibility of it. There's not.
There's not any action we can take, and the ball, the ball's out there and rolling. I don't know how to really, I mean.
I will say, I think, a lot of people watched the video from last time. And I think the associations are aware.
Yeah.
Of, what happened at that last meeting and the directive that was given.
But my concern is, just as was mentioned a moment ago, it was such an exhausting meeting. We were trying to get to the end of it. We gave direction, but I want to be definitive in being able to say this is something that we would like to have done, or at least acknowledged as that we need some action on from the legislature. And so I'd like to do that in the form of a motion. I just want to know what the appropriate language would be to make that motion.
Do you want to move to have staff to continue to look into the possibility of the removal of that statute?
So moved.
Now you make the motion.
Okay, I move that we ask staff to continue to look into the possibility of a pharmacist serving in the capacity of the executive director through legislative action. Does that kind of meet the expectations they're making?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that
That's my
accomplishes what you're trying to accomplish.
That's my motion,
Do we have a second?
which is just taking an action on the direction that we gave it during our previous meeting.
Yes. It's not making a statement either way. It's just that we want as much information as possible and know the probability, I guess, is what you're asking.
Correct.
Well, probably we would know if it's legislation, but. Do we have a second to Daniel's motion?
Second.
There
We
you
have a second from Rick Hernandez. I'm gonna have you raise your hands so that we can take a vote rather than a verbal one. All those in favor of the staff continuing with the process as far as looking to see whether or not the ED can be a non-pharmacist, please raise your hand. We have. So we, because of our quorum of what we have right now, we have 4 in favor,
You have 5.
5 in favor. Thank you for 5 in favor. All those opposed? We have 3 opposed. The motion carries to go forward with the directive as far as looking to see if the ED can be in office. So we've kind of talked in a lot of different directions with a lot of I don't know, guidance or that's not the right word. A lot of forward thinking, I guess, is the best way to go. So I don't know that we need a vote, but I want to make sure that everybody is comfortable with where we're at. And process and whether or not you feel we should look to meet maybe the last week of March. Because obviously we would want to we want to see what occurs with the bills. We want to give the staff time for that direction. We have to have our 10-day posting for a public meeting. And we want to make sure that we're still going the right direction. So thoughts on that? Everybody kind of look at their calendars too.
Say the date one more time.
I'm sorry.
Did you share a date?
And I'm looking at my calendar, sorry. My thought is, I mean, and it doesn't have to be a Wednesday, obviously. We could go back to Tuesday. Maybe do like March the 28th.
That's good for me.
And really the other thing is to make sure that that's in line with what everybody's thinking.
Julie, I think it's a good idea. We have unanswered things in progress and to be able to make sure we're responsive to what the staff needs and be able to answer these questions. It's probably good to try to meet up again similar to a date you proposed.
Is the 9 o'clock hour still a great time to do that if we did it on that day, or would move it to 10 or?
That is my preference.
I think it's important. I think the public is now kind of more going to be coming around more to what the discussions are. Hopefully we'll have some more public comment at the time and have their insight, what they think they should be doing.
Any objections to that?
No.
All right. That is really our agenda. I mean, we have pretty much the one item. We'll be able to, at that time, update everybody on the agency and what's going on. So Is there anything else we need to discuss? And if not, we can have a motion. Yes, Lord.
So I don't know if it's appropriate to ask this here, but I am continuing to get feedback that the licensing and renewals are behind, is the comment that's being made. Is there something we need to do, we as board members can do to help support that, so that pharmacy and pharmacist renewals are being handled in a more punctual manner?
Do you think it's, I mean, we can go to Misty and we can ask. You know, I'm not aware of them being too far behind. I know that, you know, the added, probably the big thing that people are seeing right now is my guess, and this is just my guess, is the fact that many of them forgot that they had to go get fingerprinted.
So I will say the two that I am personally familiar with, and then I've had some additional comments. None of them have to do with fingerprinting.
Ditto.
It is specifically, and when I've inquired, it has been, we're behind in processing these.
All right, let us, when we go back to the office, we'll definitely check into that and see where we're at.
And again, if there's something as board members we can do to assist with that, I am happy to be a part of that. This is, you know, a big public issue when a pharmacy is wondering if they're going to be able to open their doors in 2 days as they're awaiting a renewal that was submitted a month prior.
Yeah, we will definitely look to see where we are on that as soon as we get back to the office. And if there's anything that, as a board, going back to the other part of your question statement, if there's anything that any of us can do as a board members, I will definitely, either I or Ann or Megan will reach out to you.
Thank you.
Hey, Julie, could I ask you quick?
I'm sorry?
Could I say something really quick?
Yes.
I wanted to publicly acknowledge all the extra work you're doing to support the board and the staff. A lot of extra work does not go unseen by all of us. I think everyone on the board and the staff understands you really had to kind of pivot a lot of things. And it's not like they're getting paid a whole lot of money to do this, right, Julie? So I appreciate your sacrifices to go down and work with Megan and the team, and also go to front of the legislature. That was not easy, I would imagine. So I just wanted to say thank you for what you're doing, and any way we can take some load off of you. You know, I think you have commitment from everybody here. So I wanted to say thank you.
I appreciate that. And, you know, I started every testimony the exact same way, and that was to introduce myself and to say what an honor it is to serve the citizens of Texas and to represent the Texas State Board of Pharmacy. And I take all of you with me every step that I've taken. So I appreciate everything that you've done, as well as our staff. So I appreciate that, Rick.
We appreciate you and Megan.
Any other business? I will take the motion to adjourn then, if the group so agrees.
Second.
We have a motion from Jenny to adjourn. We have a second from Daniel. All those in favor? I opposed. We will call this meeting to a close then.